I didn't know that an ICE whistleblower was coming to Washington to testify. I have two videos where he gets into some pretty interesting things about how they're intentionally being trained to be more brutal and to care less about the laws that are supposed to exist.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, Representative Garcia, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Schwank. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution when I joined ICE on August 1st, 2021, as an assistant chief counsel. I followed that oath for 4.5 years, working side by side with ICE officers. And I followed it when I resigned on February 13th, 2026, a little over a week ago, so that I could speak to you today. I am here because I am duty bound to report the legally required training program at the ICE Academy is deficient, defective, and broken. 5 months ago, I was asked to teach the law to new cadets at the ICE Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, where ICE is training its new, inexperienced recruits. I volunteered, those without law enforcement training, I volunteered to take on this assignment based on my experience in law enforcement oversight, including at the state and local level prior to my work with ICE.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this guy is probably somebody who would generally be in favor of ICE's mission, considering he joined the agency. You know what I mean?
On my first day, I received secretive orders to teach new cadets to violate the Constitution.
He received secretive orders to teach new cadets to violate the Constitution
by entering homes without a judicial warrant. For the last 5 months, I watched ICE dismantle the training program, cutting 240 hours of vital classes from a 584-hour program. Classes that teach the Constitution, our legal system, firearms training, the use of force, lawful arrests, proper detention, and the limits of officers' authority. For example, they ceased all of the legal instructions regarding use of force. This means that cadets are not taught what it means to be objectively reasonable, the very standard which the law requires them to meet when deciding whether or not to use deadly force. Our jobs as instructors are to teach them so well that they can make split-second decisions about what they can and cannot do in life or death situations. Yet, in the name of churning out an endless stream of officers, DHS leadership has dismantled the academic and practical tests that we need to know if cadets can safely and lawfully.
He said in the name of like producing an endless string of officers, or I think that he's making an excuse low key for what they're doing, saying that it's not intentional, that it's just because they're rushing the process. I think that it's more intentional and systematic than that. They're treating the law as an inconvenience because the law is a hindrance to their brutality.
Fully perform their job. All to satisfy an administration demanding they train thousands of new officers before the end of the year. DHS told the public that new cadets receive all the training they need to perform their duties, that no critical material or standards have been cut. This is a lie. ICE made the program shorter, and they removed so many essential parts that what remains is a dangerous husk. No reasonable person would believe a training program suddenly cut nearly in half could meet the minimum legal requirements. These aren't abstract rules. They're required in regulations such as 8 CFR 287G1. Congress requires immigration officers to meet minimum standards for a reason. ICE cannot lawfully perform their duties, make arrests, carry weapons, and use force without passing appropriate training. New cadets are graduating from the academy despite widespread concerns among training staff that even in the final days of training, the cadets cannot demonstrate a solid grasp of the tactics or the law required to perform their jobs. Without reform, ICE will graduate thousands of new officers who do not know their constitutional duty, do not know the limits of their authority, and who do not have the training to recognize an unlawful order. That should scare everyone. DHS assures the public these cadets can get the job training on compensate for anything missing at the academy. This is a lie. Many graduates go to their home office just long enough to get their gun, their badge, and their body armor before deploying to places like Minneapolis and other ICE operations with minimal supervision. It's shocking that anyone would think this is safe or responsible. And this pattern of lies is not isolated. It extends beyond the training program to include deceiving Congress and the public about the rules followed by ICE officers once they graduate. On my first day at the academy, I was instructed to read and return a memo in my supervisor's presence, which claimed ICE officers could enter homes without a judicial warrant. The acting ICE director authorized the very conduct that DHS, in its own 2025 legal training materials, had called the chief evil against which the wording of the Fourth Amendment is directed. That is, physical entry of the home without consent or a proper warrant. Never in my career had I ever received such a blatantly unlawful order, nor one conveyed in such a troubling manner. Incredibly, I was being shown this memo in secret by my supervisor, who made sure that I understood that disobedience could cost me my job.
Wow. So he's being shown a secret memo that says, we need you to violate the Constitution, break all these laws, and if he disobeys, that he's going to be fired.
ICE is teaching cadets to violate the Constitution, and they were attempting to cloak it in secrecy by demanding that I lie about it. I am here to convey to the public the danger that is being created at the ICE Academy. I know from my conversations with many facility members, many of the faculty, that I am not alone in my fear. Law enforcement is a deadly serious business. It is not a place for shortcuts. Deficient training can and will get people killed. It can and will lead to unlawful arrests, violations of constitutional rights, and a fundamental loss of public trust in law enforcement. ICE is lying to Congress and the American people about the steps it is taking to ensure its 12,000 new officers faithfully uphold the Constitution and can perform their jobs.
It's definitely clear that the last ICE leader that they had on there, I think last week that we looked at, was lying about multiple things. And this whistleblower has kind of proven that.
The memo dates from May, and it was used for hundreds of agents who now are on the streets and in our neighborhoods. These agents now have less training than most of the police officers.
I think the training thing is irrelevant. I'm going to get through this guy's clip farming and get to the actual whistleblower up here. The training is irrelevant if the goal is still the same and the permissions are the same. I think that's what he's going to describe in this clip here is like, it doesn't matter how you train them if they're watching brutality on the TV and then they're seeing their fellow officers get away with it. That tells them how they should behave, essentially, because a lot of them want to behave that way.
It was shown to me that first time, and maybe one other time it was shown to me. Other than
He's talking about the memo and when it was shown to him, the secret memo.
someone physically handing me the document, I never saw it again. And right before I left, I checked the repository where the agency keeps a copy of every official memo and policy guidance that is in effect. And there is no copy of it there. And Senator, I will point out to you, if we look at this document, if we look at it, every memo issued by ICE has a control number. It has something on it that indicates that it is an official policy document and where it falls in the agency's archives. And that's not on this document anywhere. Also, anytime we issue a memo, there is something in the document to control its release, something that says law enforcement only or for official use only, classified secret, something. And there's nothing on this memo that says that. Nowhere on this memo is there anything that would let you know that this is an official policy of the agency. And to my knowledge, it's never been disseminated as one. It's been handed out
Bro has receipts.
piecemeal to people to use when the agency thinks they need to.
Which directly undercuts the veracity of Acting Director Lyons' testimony under oath before a congressional committee. I want to go into some of the details here because I think they are so revealing, Mr. Schwank. You started your job at ICE in September of last year. This memo dates from May. How did you first see this memo?
Thank you, Senator. So I've been with ICE for about 4.5 years, but I was an instructor at Glencoe from September. The memo was shown to me by my supervisor at Glencoe. It was given to me in person with instructions that I could read it, but not take any notes on it, that I could read it in their presence, and that was it. And that I was going to teach from it, but I couldn't keep a copy of it to reference. And I couldn't document that I taught it to anyone, just that I could read it.
You were to train on it, but your supervisor didn't want you to have a copy of it for fear that it might be revealed. And in fact, it was revealed only when whistleblowers came to me, brave and strong as they were, came to me, put their professional careers and personal lives on the line and said they would reveal it. When you were told to train it on it, I believe that there was some conversation about instructing agents who were your students to follow this memo's policies, not the other written guidance that they might be provided. Is that correct?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, that is correct. So what the cadets were told to do was that they had the authority to make an arrest under this memo in someone's home, that they should knock on the door, and if the person did not open, as Miss Gibson Brown's family did, that they could use force to enter that home, reasonable force to execute the I-205 administrative removal order. That's what we were teaching cadets at the academy. That's what we were told to teach them. And I will tell you, when I taught my classes, I would tell the cadets that this policy existed, and I would tell them that they needed to check with their local office before they did anything, because there was no legal basis for this. But I did tell them this was the agency policy.
Were you apprehensive that a failure to follow this illegal policy might result in demotion or discharge?
Yes, Senator, I was. In fact, it was made very clear to me when it was shown to me that if I did not follow it, I would probably lose my job. Two other attorneys for the agency had just been removed from teaching positions at the academy. One forcibly resigned. And the way it was shown to me or told to me was that it was because they disagreed with management over this policy.
So this illegal policy was not just a suggestion, it was an order, and people were disciplined as a result.
To really highlight what they are doing here is that they are really trying to bypass every kind of defense that there is in the legal system to prevent them from just, snatching people up without a warrant, entering homes without a warrant. These are like the only things that really we have in this country. You know what I mean? And of course, the whole thing of it's just the immigrants who are the target of it, that is just the foot in the door. That has been proven in authoritarian dictatorships throughout history. And regardless, even if it was just the immigrants, that's extremely inhumane to treat human beings like this.
Of failing to implement this illegal policy. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, Senator. As I said, it's my understanding that an attorney before me, in fact, the reason I was at Glencoe is because I was the alternate for the person who was forcibly resigned over their refusal to teach the memo.
And just so everyone understands, this memorandum was written by the acting director of this agency, ICE, with instructions about breaking a long-standing practice and policy of ICE itself, a well-established policy and practice of police forces going back hundreds of years, a practice and policy that embodies the core Fourth Amendment values and provisions that no person, not just citizen, can have his home violated without a court saying that there's probable cause to do so. You taught ICE agents, candidates for graduation that then went on to Minneapolis. They went all around the country. We've talked about DHS contention that the standards are the same, which is belied by the documents as well as your testimony. The numbers of courses have been drastically cut. The hours have been reduced. The physical or practical exams have been truncated. DHS may contend, well, we give tests to these cadets before they graduate. But my understanding is that many of the tests are paper tests, multiple.
We have two types of tests. We have multiple choice exams.
That guy is way too
We have practical exams.
slow.
With the multiple choice tests, the cadets went from having to do them in a closed book format where they had to depend on what they had learned and memorized to doing them.
I think those were the main points that I wanted to get across. The rest of it really focused on the training aspects, and train people on what the law is. That's definitely necessary, but at the same time, more training is not going to save ICE. And thinking in that direction is very dangerous because it would result in half measures that wouldn't really change anything.